You're never ever wrong, no, you're never wrong, never wrong, you're never ever wrong, no, you're never wrong, never wrong. You're never ever wrong, always something more to say. You're never wrong, but you're never mind, I'll be fine. You're never.
Hey, what is up, everybody? Welcome back to House School Fire Gaming. So today we're gonna have another Feminist frequency reaction video. Oh boy, I can tell this is gonna be really irritating. So basically here, it says, not your exotic fantasy, tropes versus women in video games. This series is completely annoying because of how wrong it is, but also, you know, tropes versus women in video games, all the topics she did on that was like complete bullshit. I think I did like 2 videos on them, 1, 2, I can't remember, it's been a while. But yeah, apparently this is about tribal women being racist or something. Yeah, let's have a look at it. That's Resident Evil 5.
Wait! You're not going alone.
I can see what point she's trying to make here. That's just a costume you can get, one of many from Sheila? I think it's Shiva. Yeah, Shiva. It's one of many costumes you can get. It's a player choice. You want to dress her up like a businesswoman? Go right ahead. You want to dress her up as, you know, normal clothing? Go right ahead. You want to dress her up as like a native in a bikini? Go right ahead. No one's gonna stop you. It's a player choice. You can do the exact same thing with Chris Redfield. There's like a leathery type of clothing that shows off his chest and his bulging muscles. Doesn't complain about that though. Hypocritical intro again.
Ubisoft's 2012 game Far Cry 3 cast players as Jason Brody, a young white American man vacationing in Bangkok with his brother and their white friends.
What does being white have to do with it?
But their carefree fun comes to an end when a skydiving trip goes wrong and they all end up being kidnapped by evil pirates who, you guessed it, are not white.
Thailand doesn't have many white people, and the Rook Islands, it's like in between Thailand and Papua New Guinea, isn't it? I don't know. Like, it's in between there, and Thailand, Papua New Guinea, they're kind of close, you know. And then there's not many white people in either of those countries. Like nearly none, actually. Isn't it like 95% of people in Thailand are like not white?
Jason escapes and encounters a group of island natives called the Rakyat, who enlist his help to rid their island of the pirates, ushering Jason into his exotic and exciting new role as a tribal warrior and white savior is Citra, a young woman who's viewed among her people as a warrior goddess.
See, that's the thing. That's the thing. And Nia Sarkeesian always has something to complain about. If there are no women fighting in video games, she has something to complain about then. When a girl is a warrior goddess in this fairly diverse game where it's like black people can either be good or bad and white people can either be good or bad. So yeah, it's a good diversity in this game. But when it's something like this, she always has something to complain about. No matter what you do, she'll have something to complain about.
Under her guidance, Jason's adventure rapidly becomes an absurd hodgepodge of racist stereotypes about tribal cultures and brown women.
It's completely fictional. The only thing I think they did factual here is like basing it, since it's like based near Thailand or something, there's no whites. There's barely any whites. If not at all. So it's just, okay, developers just wanted to make a story about a savage tribe that was based in a country, or near, that had basically nearly no white people, and they made a really good story about it.
At one point, Citra gives Jason a hallucination-inducing drink which leads him into battle with an imagined giant. After he defeats the monster, he's rewarded with a topless Citra, telling him that he's now part of the tribe.
You are Rakyat.
Okay. Just a sex scene.
Strange mystical powers return later in the game when she blows a glowing dust into Jason's face, triggering another hallucinatory sequence that culminates in the game-ending choice: to save Jason's friends and leave the island, or to do Citra's bidding, to savagely kill his friends and stay on the island with her.
Yep, that's a choice. Either go with the romance option and join Citra and be a part of the tribe, or yeah, at least you think you're gonna be part of the tribe, but after you have sex with her to have a child, you get killed immediately. Or you can save your friends. See, it's a player's choice here. You can do whatever you want. I know for a fact she's gonna complain about this immediately, but like, see, what would you rather it be? If you want, she's never happy with romance options in these games. She's never happy. Never once is she happy. The only time she was happy was a female protagonist was when she had this game. It was like, I can't remember. I think I did a video about it. Did I? I think so. I don't think I did. But like, there was this person that was pixelated, that looked nothing like a human at all, looked nothing like a man or a woman, and the story was just about basically she had no emotion, she had no backstory, she was just nothing. She was just, pixelated. See, that's the type of things that it was the only female protagonist that she was happy with. Had no emotion, no backstory, nothing. Nothing at all. The only time she's happy.
If players choose to murder Jason's friends and stay with Citra, a scene plays in which the two of them have sex. Then she stabs him while stating that their child will become the new leader of the tribe. Those mystical tribal powers of hers just immediately let her know that she's already pregnant.
I'll be yours.
Wouldn't be surprised.
On one hand, Citra is yet another example of a female character whose sexuality is presented as a motivator and reward for the presumed straight male player.
For fuck's sake. Jesus Christ. I don't know what you think happens in romance, but probably about 99% of relationships, there's going to be sex in them. It's just an accurate depiction of a romance. Someone you love, you're going to have sex with. See what I mean? Seems pretty reasonable.
But there's something more insidious happening with Citra. Her body paint and magical powers suggest she practices some sort of tribal mysticism, which also roots her in a long-standing tradition of racist stereotypes.
Oh, for fuck's sake. Again, it's a fake story about a tribe that just happened to be near Thailand and just mystical powers. I mean, what's got to do with anything? What's it got to do with it?
Elements of sexism and racism intersect, turning Citra into a stereotype of an exotic, primitive, mystical, savage, sexualized woman of color.
Oh,
This linking of sexism and racism is an...
Hang on. Is that... Not only is that from the 50s, what does that have to do with exotic? What does that have to do with it? It's just an Asian woman, not sexualized at all. Jeez, sorry, I have phlegm in me. With just an older guy. Doesn't this movie, isn't that like a soldier or something? Yeah, and falls in love with her, and they love each other and all that. What does that have to do with it? Can you at least get some sort of relevant examples? This is just a movie based in the 50s that has nothing to do with video games.
Example of what's called exotification. Exotification occurs when a group is treated as inherently different, alluring, and strange.
Like a lamb.
Well, I mean, let's just say this for example. America is going to think that what we do in Australia is weird. Because it's a different country, you have different rules and different customs. Like in America, they might find it weird that we have different gun laws. Because, I mean, our gun laws work. We get no school shootings or anything. Barely at all. So, yeah, that's the thing. And also with America and Asia, they have different customs. They're gonna find it weird because they're not the customs that we're used to. It's gonna be weird.
For instance, when certain white men falsely view Asian women as inherently more obedient or submissive than women from other cultures, and sexually fetishize them as a result of these false notions.
That's not really a false notion. I mean, back in those days, especially in the times before, they were obedient, because that was their custom. Women were supposed to be obedient, and basically have no opinion whatsoever. That was just factual. That was actually what happened.
Those women are being exotified, and their race is falsely depicted as the defining aspect of their character and personality.
America, so far away.
Not so far away that I'll forget you.
Examples are still
In
irrelevant.
this episode, we're focusing specifically on racist stereotypes of tribal and indigenous cultures. But it's important to note that women of color from any background can be, and often are, stereotyped and exotified.
Ugh. Again, irrelevant examples.
Sometimes black female characters are exotified entirely through clothing that simultaneously sexualizes them while also evoking racist stereotypes.
You're not mentioning Chris Redfield, are you? Not mentioning Chris.
2009's Resident Evil 5 introduced a new character to the series, Sheva Alomar,
Knew it.
a bioterrorism security assessment alliance agent who joins Chris Redfield as he confronts an outbreak of infected in a fictional region of Africa. The first time you play through the game, Sheva looks like this. However, once the story has been completed, if players also collect all 30 BSAA tokens scattered throughout the levels, they unlock a new outfit for Sheva called the Tribal Costume. Equipping this outfit takes Sheva, who up until this point has been wearing somewhat practical attire for the work she's doing, and shoves her into a leopard print bikini top and a few tatters of fabric around her waist.
There are other clothing you can put her in. Also, Chris, there was like leather. He was like in leather, and like he had no top or anything, and there was like a leather harness going around. That was for female and gay's eye candy. Just as for this can be for male and gay women's eye candy. Funny thing is, she never mentions about gay couples, does she? Never mentions it. Never mentions it. So yeah, you can just get any costume you want. I never really cared about costumes, except when they look extremely cool and seem to fit the character more than what their default costume was. But like with Chris, I was happy with it. It was like, yeah, he's a BSAA agent. I think it's what it's called. And yeah, the outfit looks cool on him. I was just like, yeah, this outfit will do. I don't really care. Plus, I never really made an effort to get any of those tokens. I don't really see the point in them. You just collect them all to get a costume. I don't really get it.
Applying paint markings to decorate her face and body. In Hyrule Warriors, the villain Sia is one half of the spirit of the original sorceress, a noble being who watched over the balance of the Triforce. When the evil Ganondorf drives the light from the sorceress's soul, she splits into two, with her virtuous half becoming Lana, who, like the similarly righteous Link and Zelda, is fair-skinned. Meanwhile, her evil half becomes the darker-skinned Sia, who casts dark magic, wears an extremely sexualized outfit, and whose body is adorned with markings reminiscent of tribal body paint.
Jesus. So Link, right? Japanese creation, right? Alright, so the reason why she's a little bit darker is because actually there's only really one point, isn't there? It's because that in Japanese culture, the color black is usually associated with evil. There's not many black people in Japan anyway, so it's not really based off racism. It's just that in their culture, the color black is basically evil. They did the same thing with Goku Black in Dragon Ball Super. That's what they did. They made an evil version of Goku that was being controlled by Zamasu. Not really being controlled, but like they swap bodies. So Zamasu is basically Goku now. And so, darker color of Goku, a little bit darker skin color because, you know, black is usually associated with evil, but it wasn't like completely black. If anything, you could have called him Dark Goku because he was not, the skin was not black at all, really. And, yeah, and the clothes were completely black. It's just associated with evil.
These differences between Lana and Sia, two halves of the same being, directly link the color of their skin to their goodness and virtue, falsely suggesting that a lighter skin tone reflects a purer, more noble spirit. In reality, lighter...
Because, I mean, it seems basic, like, with, with some little kid stories, you see, like, a lighter color usually means, you know, better, like a good person, like a good side. And then you see darker color, darker usually means bad. You know, it just seems logical. But there's not many black people in Japan.
Lighter-skinned
Not
women
many.
of color are often depicted as more desirable and more virtuous because they come closer to meeting the culturally dominant white beauty standards.
No.
This insidious notion that a darker skin tone reflects a less moral or virtuous soul is hardly new to the Zelda franchise, in which the heroic and noble characters like Link and Zelda are fair-skinned, while the recurring villain Ganondorf is associated with the darker-skinned Gerudo people.
Again, it's with the Japanese culture, and plus, don't they live in like the desert or something, and they had to adapt to their environment?
In Diablo 3, there are 6, soon to be 7 classes to choose from, but only one of them is represented by black characters, the Witch Doctor, employing just about every visual stereotype about tribal warriors in the book: elaborate piercings, skull masks and body paint, and carrying voodoo dolls and shrunken.
They're not saying every tribe did this. It just so happened they made a story up about one tribe that doesn't exist that was savage. There were savage tribes, actually. There were. Plus, if you're talking about why people usually didn't have a lot of clothing, take indigenous aboriginals, like Australian aboriginals, for example. They wore nothing. They wore nothing. They absolutely wore nothing. That was historical fact. I mean, like, how many tribal people do you see wearing jackets? How many do you see wearing that? How many? She's never happy.
Heads as items of power. The Witch Doctor is a caricature of tribal identity rooted in centuries-old racist imagery that has no place being perpetuated in the 21st century. And this is nothing new. Harmful, ignorant, racist stereotypes have been used in the design of supporting characters and enemies in games for decades.
But that's like an African American tribe. That doesn't seem offensive at all.
And often the result is female characters who are both sexualized and exotified.
Have you come to kill me?
Don't see anything
It's no secret that
sexualized
fighting
there.
games often feature sexualized female characters, and often feature characters whose design is rooted in ethnic stereotypes. Sometimes these two
How?
elements combine in sexualized, exotified female characters. In Street Fighter 4, Elena wears, well, she wears almost nothing. But the bands that she wears on her arms...
Yep, that's because she's native. Not a lot of native people wore a lot of clothing. I mean, like... I think, like... Yeah, like for Aboriginals, for example, they wore nothing. It doesn't seem very surprising that natives in here would wear nothing as well. And, like, this guy's not wearing a whole lot either. I mean, he's only, like, holding one little cloak over his shoulder. I think he's only wearing, like, very short pants as well. I mean, like, or underwear. I don't know.
legs and neck vaguely suggest African tribal culture, and she possesses that stereotypical character trait of a mystical connection to the earth.
I'll show you my dance. You ready?
All these stereotypes are anything but harmless. Here in the United States, racist images and stereotypes of black women have been doing tremendous harm for centuries. In fact, false ideas about black women as inherently hypersexual beings were perpetuated in Southern slaveholding society. This was a time when oppressive Victorian ideas still held sway, creating a false sense of womanhood as inherently domestic, submissive, chaste, innocent, and modest.
I'm still trying to figure out why these examples are being showed. They're not really showing a lot of what's going on. There's not, like, much, connection with the games at all, really. Plus, I mean, like, if you're gonna get offended because one game or games just have this little notion that tribal people didn't wear a lot of clothing, which they didn't. They didn't wear a lot, and if you're gonna get offended by that, then you just need to get over it. I mean, not with these black women. I can see why they can get a little bit angry, but like, it's not pointed to them. It's not getting pointed to them. It's just a fictional story that's been made up, and it's just for entertainment. It's not meant to be racist or sexist. It's not supposed to be any of that.
But the reality of black women's lives as slaves was irreconcilable with these notions. Not only were female slaves, of course, denied any and all basic rights as people,
Male slaves weren't either. They were not seen as people either.
they were also often forced to be naked when on display at auctions,
Also men.
regularly whipped in partial or total nudity as punishment, and were frequently sexually assaulted and raped by their owners. In her essential book, Sister Citizen, Melissa Harris Perry explores how myths about black women's sexuality were deliberately perpetuated by white people as a way of rationalizing their cruel and dehumanizing treatment of female slaves. The myth of black women as lascivious, seductive, and insatiable was a way of reconciling the forced public exposure and commoditization of black women's bodies with the Victorian ideals of women's modesty and fragility. The idea that black women were hypersexual beings created space for white moral superiority by justifying the brutality of Southern white men. These false, harmful stereotypes and their tragic impact have remained alive through the centuries and into the present day. Throughout most of American history, up to and including much of the 20th century, the sexual assault and rape of black women by white men was almost never treated as a crime. In her book, Dark Continent of Our Bodies, historian Frances E. White says, "Virtually no legal protection was provided for women who were portrayed as loose and licentious.
Where does it tie into the games? Can you please tell me where this ties into this?
Under such conditions, black women, promiscuous by definition, found it nearly impossible to convince a legal establishment that men of any race should be prosecuted for sexually assaulting them. The rape of black women was simply no crime at all."
Yes, because it was racist times.
Obviously, the problem here is not with the idea of representing women who come from tribal cultures. Our media absolutely should reflect the cultural diversity of the world we live in, but that's not what characters like these do, at all.
There is no tribe near Thailand or near the island. I don't even think the island's real, is it? No, there are no tribe. It's not basing tribes off any that exist. Not at all. It's just a convenience for a good story. It's just fiction. Far Cry 3 Tribe has nothing to do with anything in real life. Oh, fuck's sake.
These are not respectful, well-researched representations of actual cultures. Rather, they represent a form of cultural appropriation, when a dominant culture exploits and often profits from the history, culture, or traditions of a marginalized group. Like a white person putting on a sombrero and a fake mustache, grabbing a bottle of tequila and saying they're going as a Mexican for Halloween.
Where does that tie into this? That's not at all what they're trying to do in Far Cry 3. Not at all what they're trying to do. They're not trying to base anything off anything. It's just a fictional story. Where are you getting this?
These offensive and embarrassing depictions reduce rich cultures down to a few stereotypical signifiers. Mystical powers, skimpy, tattered clothing, body paint.
For fuck's sake. For Christ's sake. Okay, so for the one from Far Cry 3, it wasn't really so much magical, it was just more about hallucinations. So yeah, you could see why they thought it was mystical, because, you know, she thought that she was just, like, blowing drugs into them. And, like, didn't Jason get raped by her? Because, like, you know, didn't give consent or anything during the hallucinations, so she basically raped him. And for the second one, yes, like, not many indigenous tribes wore clothing. Not many. So they can't make her, like, fully naked, because, you know, that'd be bad. That'd be really bad. And for the one from Resident Evil 5, that's just a costume you can get. It's just a costume. You don't have to wear it. It's just optional out of the many costumes you can get.
And racialized hypersexualization are used as shorthand for exotic. As a result, these signifiers reinforce extremely false and damaging stereotypes about the people and cultures that they're appropriating. These false, harmful myths and stereotypes continue to contribute to the marginalization and oppression of women of color in America today. For instance, in her book, The Politics of Disgust, feminist theorist Anne-Marie Hancock discusses how racial stereotypes about black women contribute to a political system in which the marginalized continue to be underserved, oppressed, and unheard. We very rarely see portrayals of women of color in games that incorporate the cultural history of those characters in honest, respectful ways. In many ways, Alex Vance from Half-Life 2 and its follow-up episodes is a great character, and it's good to see a non-sexualized woman of color in such a prominent role. But the game isn't concerned with her cultural background. Nilin, the biracial protagonist...
Because if they did concern with the background, you would have something to complain about. So they decided to go with a safe thing, and then, yet again, you're not happy with it. What's she saying about...
Remember Me is a sexualized female protagonist.
How? How is she sexualized? Explain how she's sexualized. She's just wearing jeans. Does that mean that every single girl I see in my country town, because I live in a country town, you see a lot of jeans in country towns. Does that mean that they're all sexualizing themselves? Does that really mean it? She's wearing respectable clothing.
But the sexualization doesn't employ racist tropes. Like Alex, her cultural background is treated as irrelevant. Unfortunately, there aren't many positive examples of women of color in games whose cultural history isn't erased, but also isn't presented as the stuff of racist stereotypes. And
that's not right at all.
That's a shame, because characters whose cultural background is incorporated honestly and respectfully can work to challenge the deeply racist status quo. We're at least seeing some improvement where black male protagonists are concerned. Though they're far from perfect in terms of representation, 2016's Watch Dogs 2 and Mafia 3 center black male characters and acknowledge black identity and structural racism as aspects of their characters' lives.
Okay, well, Watch Dogs 2, I did not think at all about why the character was black. I just wanted to play the game because it seemed cool. I got bored of it pretty quickly, actually. Mafia 3, I want to play that game, actually.
Mafia 3 does feature a supporting character named Cassandra, a woman of Haitian heritage whose background is very important to her character. Cassandra fights the entrenched Italian mafia and their racist brutality against the poor black citizens of the game's fictional southern city. The game 1979 Revolution doesn't center a woman as its protagonist, but in telling the story of the Iranian Revolution, it illustrates how games can introduce players to new cultural perspectives in ways that are respectful and compelling, and that work to counteract stereotypes rather than to reinforce them.
We are a nation of equality greater than Western capitalism.
One game with a female protagonist that does an excellent job of incorporating a character's cultural history and traditions is Never Alone, which stars a young girl named Nunya, a member of the Inupiat people of Alaska.
Not that hard to do. If they're in, like, Alaska, which is very cold, they're gonna wear a lot of fur. Not that hard to do. I mean, like with indigenous aboriginals, wouldn't be hard to do that either if you did the research. They wore no clothes. You can't obviously do that in games, so they have to make it seem that they know that there was no clothing on the aboriginals, but they can't do that, so they have to make it so like the women get like bras and panties and that's it, and men would just get underwear and that's it. They would have to do it like that.
Folklore and traditions of the Inupiat are incorporated throughout the game in a respectful way that enriches the player's understanding of these people and their experiences.
Ugh.
This kind of respectful treatment of cultural history and traditions should be the norm, but instead, games more often just plunder marginalized cultures with no sense of respect and no concern whatsoever about accurately reflecting the people and traditions they're appropriating from.
Alright, Aboriginals didn't wear a lot of clothing. Africans didn't wear a lot of clothing. I mean, for Aboriginals, they wore no clothing. Africans, I think they wore, like, pants. I can't remember. I mean, like, they either wore no clothing, or they wore very little clothing. That is historically accurate.
To put it simply, it's not okay for games to reduce these cultures to stereotypical costumes and personality traits in an effort to add a bit of exotic flair to their worlds. It should not be too much to ask for and expect representations of people of color whose cultural backgrounds are acknowledged and woven into their characters in ways that are thoughtful, validating, and humanizing.
They're not dehumanizing at all. They're not. They're really not. I'm gonna have to go very soon because I need to go to the toilet. But like, yeah, all this whole tribal thing of Far Cry 3, that's just fictional. That's just a story there for entertainment. And it was a really good story. Really cool. And, yeah, like a lot of indigenous people didn't wear a lot of clothes. I mean, like, African people, they didn't wear a lot of clothes. Aboriginals wore no clothes. Definitely wore no clothes. So, yeah, they are being historically accurate. It's just being accurate. So, yeah, that's it for this video, guys. Oh, wait a minute. I just realized something. She has the comments disabled, and the like to dislike ratio is not shown. So, yeah, that when you look at videos like that, you just kind of think that, well, this video is going to be horrible because she knows that people are going to have opinions against her, but she doesn't want to know them because she wants to keep the argument one-sided. So, yeah, you have a look at the video on here because I'm not going to bother putting the picture up. There's really no point. But, yeah, you just look on that and there's, like, no comments. Or, like, the like to dislike ratio is gone as well. So that's it for this video, guys. Like, subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.